12 years after my cheating wife abandoned me during my hospitalization, she seeks forgiveness. Hi, I'm Jason, 47, and I want to share a pivotal moment in my life to seek some advice. This story dates back 12 years, when I was married to my first wife, Susan. We had been together for 7 years and had 2 children, Laura and Lucas, who were just 5 and 3 at the time. Our life was fairly typical until one fateful day changed everything. One morning, while driving to work, a speeding car collided with mine. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed, bandaged and bruised. The nurse told me I had been in a coma for 2 days. I was grateful to my doctor for saving my life, but I had no idea of the turmoil that awaited me. A week into my recovery, the doctor delivered devastating news. I was paralyzed from the waist down and might never walk again. Susan was understandably distraught, having to juggle managing the household and caring for our children while I struggled with my new reality. I fell into a deep depression, haunted by the thoughts of how my life had irrevocably changed. I longed for the simple joys of playing soccer with my kids or dancing with my wife, but all of that felt out of reach. As my condition worsened, Susan's visits dwindled. In the early days of my hospitalization, she brought the kids to see me 3 times a week, and those moments were the highlights of my days. But soon, her visits became infrequent, and I found myself pleading with her to bring them. Her responses were disheartening. She claimed they didn't want to see me as often. I felt utterly abandoned. Then came the day when she handed me divorce papers, saying, "I can't spend my life with a handicapped man. I'm still young and deserve a normal partner." Though I had sensed her growing distance, I never expected the divorce would come so soon, just a month after my accident. Friends informed me they had seen Susan out with a middle-aged man, possibly in his 50s, holding hands in cafes and malls. Some suggested she had been unfaithful even before my accident, while others speculated her desperation led her to an older, wealthy man. Just 2 months after my accident, I was still in the hospital when I received those divorce papers. While I may seem calm now as I write this, I was anything but back then. I was devastated and heartbroken, grappling with a new identity as a wheelchair-bound man facing an uncertain future. I had no income or savings left after covering the household expenses and the children's education. Luckily, my insurance helped with my hospital bills, but I had to drain my savings for everything else, leaving me with nothing. I wanted to scream and lash out at the unfairness of it all, but something inside me, perhaps a desire for revenge, kept me going. Once I was discharged, I moved in with my elderly parents. At 35, I found myself divorced and relying on my 62-year-old mother for support. She was a florist, barely making ends meet with her small shop and pension. It was humbling and heartbreaking to depend on her. Not long after I got home, I tried to see my children. When I arrived at our house, I found it locked. Neighbors informed me that Susan had moved in with her new partner and taken the kids with her. Her new boyfriend was described as a wealthy man, but with a history of failed marriages. Some neighbors even labeled Susan a gold digger for being with him. Determined to see my kids, I tracked down Susan's new address. However, when I arrived, she refused to let me see them. She claimed they had adjusted to their new life and were calling her boyfriend Daddy. I pleaded with her, but she threatened to get a restraining order. I was financially strapped and couldn't afford a lawyer, so I had no choice but to back off. It was less than 6 months after my accident, and just a few months post-divorce, and Susan was already living with another man. I felt sickened by her quick abandonment. I confronted her, asking how she could move on so swiftly. I know now it was immature of me to plead for her to reconsider. I was a vulnerable, wheelchair-bound father. What options did I have? When I inquired if she had cheated before our divorce, she dismissed my question, saying it was none of my business and that I should never show my face to her again. I left, tears streaming down my face, feeling utterly defeated. I cried like a child in front of my mother, who comforted me and encouraged me to reclaim my life. I felt lost and without direction. I began helping my mother at her shop, creating bouquets and serving customers. It became clear to me that the business had great potential for growth, but my mother was too fragile to take it further. I reconnected with old contacts and secured contracts with event management companies to supply flowers. Slowly, I built a team, took on contracts for venue decorations, and eventually launched my own event management company. It took 12 long years, but I eventually rebuilt my life. My mother stood by me through it all, offering her support and motivation. A year after my accident, I learned that Susan was leaving the city with my children and her new partner. I rushed to her house to see them, but by the time I arrived, they had already left. Despite multiple attempts to reach out, Susan insulted me and chased me away every time. With her having full custody, she made all the decisions for our children, leaving me feeling powerless and heartbroken. I couldn't contest joint custody or challenge the restraining order Susan had placed against me because I simply didn't have the funds to hire a lawyer. Meanwhile, Susan was living comfortably with her wealthy boyfriend, Evan. I had no idea if Evan was already in the picture before my accident or if he had suddenly appeared afterward, but I knew he was a man of considerable means, with substantial family assets. Over the past 12 years, I tried to track down my children whenever I received any leads, but each time I attempted to see them, I was met with failure. Susan would threaten to have me arrested, knowing her boyfriend had the connections and resources to get away with anything. Interestingly, even after all this time, Evan never married Susan, despite them living together for over a decade. A year ago, I finally decided to fight for joint custody. I had been waiting for my event management business to stabilize before taking this step. After a lot of effort, I managed to secure 15 days with my children. They are flying in next week to visit me. Although Susan tried her best to object during the court proceedings, I hired a competent lawyer who presented my case effectively. Now that my children are older, 17 and 15, they were asked if they wanted to see me, and they eagerly said yes. While I can't make up for the lost years, I am looking forward to spending quality time with them. As the visit approaches, I'm feeling both anxious and excited. Teenagers can be quite demanding these days, and I hope my kids aren't overly difficult. I'm uncertain about what story Susan has told them over the years, and I wonder if I should share the truth about their mother's actions. I'm looking for suggestions on how to approach this delicate situation. Update 1. I have some significant updates to share that I left out of my original post. First, I remarried a wonderful woman named Amy 5 years ago. Amy is an interior designer, and we met at an event where she was decorating a wedding venue, and I was providing the flowers. It wasn't love at first sight, but we connected well and became friends over several months of working together. At the time, she was a single mother to a 3-year-old daughter. It was Amy's idea to start the event management business together. Given her experience and contacts in the industry, we dated for a year before getting married, and now we have a happy family of 4, Amy, her daughter Mia, my mother, and me. Mia was thrilled to have a grandmother, and my mother was equally delighted. The second update involves the accident compensation. I was struck by a speeding truck, and ideally, I should have received compensation from the logistics company responsible for it. Unfortunately, they manipulated the facts surrounding the accident and pinned the blame on me, allowing them to walk away without paying a dime. I couldn't afford a good lawyer at that time, so I didn't receive anything. After marrying Amy, she encouraged me to refile the case now that we could hire a competent lawyer. The case is still ongoing, but my lawyer has given us a positive outlook, hinting that the judgment may be in our favor. Returning to my story, 3 months ago, my children were finally set to visit me after 12 years of separation. I was filled with both excitement and nerves, but Amy was there to support me through it all. I went to pick them up from the airport. Laura is now 15, and Lucas is 13. They have grown into beautiful and handsome teenagers. However, after the initial greetings, the atmosphere became awkward as we struggled to find common ground. During the drive home, I tried to break the ice by asking about their school life and the city they lived in, purposely avoiding any mention of their mother, and they seemed to follow my lead, remaining silent, likely eager to plug in their earphones like any typical teenager. Upon arriving home, Amy greeted us, and the kids looked taken aback, as if they hadn't expected to see her. I was puzzled as to why Amy's presence surprised them when their mother had moved in with another man shortly after our divorce. I thought, if Susan could move on, why couldn't I? Amy had set up the guest room for the children, and after lunch, she laid out the family vacation itinerary we had planned. Their response was neutral. They neither seemed excited nor dismissive of the plans. Confused by their mixed reactions, they retreated to their room. Shortly after, I received a call from Susan, accusing me of tricking our children into coming to my house. She claimed that Amy and I were attempting to manipulate them. I felt disoriented by her accusations, especially since she had left me for another man so quickly. I hung up on her, but she continued to call. Feeling it was essential to address the tension, I gathered my children and asked them what was wrong. After some initial hesitation, they opened up. They were angry with me because Susan had convinced them that I had abandoned them. It became clear that she had filled their heads with lies about my absence over the years. I told them the truth, that it was their mother who had left me for another man soon after my accident. They were kids at the time, yet they recalled those events vividly. I showed them the restraining order and all my attempts to reach out to them that had been rejected. They were in tears, filled with regret for believing their mother's lies all this time. Lucas even admitted that he had tried to contact me on social media once but was caught by Susan, who emotionally blackmailed him into promising never to reach out to me again. They also revealed that they had been mistreated by Susan's boyfriend during family gatherings, as he frequently reminded them that he was not their father. Despite the financial support he provided for their education, they lived in a tense and complicated situation. He was never a true father to them, and my heart ached as I learned about the hardships my children faced. After all the truths were revealed, we embraced tightly and cried together, releasing years of pent-up emotions. We then set off on a week-long vacation in Florida, where we created beautiful memories. Laura and Lucas quickly bonded with Amy and Mia, who would be turning 8 this year. Seeing my family together filled me with happiness. My children even shared our group photos on social media, captioning them "Happy Family." Upon seeing those pictures, Susan called them, berating them for what she deemed a foolish betrayal. She sent me a threatening text, warning that she wouldn't allow me to see my children again if I continued to turn them against her. I laughed off her empty threats and enjoyed the rest of our vacation. After returning home, my children reconnected with my relatives, who were thrilled to welcome them. It was heartwarming to see old bonds rekindled. As they were about to leave, they promised to stay in touch. Despite Susan's threats, they expressed feelings suffocated in her house and hinted that they would move back in with me after finishing high school. I hugged them tightly as we said our goodbyes. Once home, they confronted Susan about her manipulation, but she twisted the narrative, accusing me of brainwashing them against her. Although it's been a few months since their visit, we maintain regular communication. I hold on to the hope that they will eventually choose to live with me. I'll keep you updated on any developments. Thank you all for your support. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last update. The past 6 months have been filled with drama following my first meeting with my children. The lawsuit against the logistics company has finally been settled. I received a substantial compensation package, not just for the accident but also for the injustices of the initial trial. As I mentioned before, the logistics company manipulated the situation and wrongfully blamed me for the accident, leaving me without any compensation. At Amy's suggestion, I decided to appeal the decision, and this time, I won. My children were thrilled to hear the news and expressed their desire to see me again. I promised them they could move in with me permanently. A month later, Susan unexpectedly showed up at my office, grasping my hand and asking for forgiveness. I was taken aback by her sudden visit. She confessed that after my accident, she felt desperate and had found an older man who wanted a sugar baby. I had to look up what that meant. Apparently, he had endured a bad experience with a younger woman who had taken advantage of him, so he settled on Susan, who was 32 at the time, because she had 2 children to prove her loyalty. Susan explained that he made it clear he wouldn't marry her, choosing instead to keep her as a mistress to avoid sharing his inheritance with my children. She accepted his terms, believing it would secure their future, providing food and funding for their education. When I asked why she hadn't sought employment, she admitted she had never worked and doubted she could maintain the lifestyle he provided. She insisted that she had acted in the children's best interests, claiming they would have faced poverty without her choices. Her justifications frustrated me, and I snapped, telling her she should have consulted me before abandoning our family. If she truly cared for our children's future, we could have worked together instead of her jumping to conclusions. I made it clear that I had moved on, and her pleas fell on deaf ears. She reminisced about our past, recalling happy moments like our wedding and the births of our children. I dismissed her, stating that those memories no longer held any significance for me. When she crossed the line by claiming that she and my children were my true family, while Amy and Mia were not, I felt revulsion. She demanded that I take her back so our real family could reunite. I firmly told her that I loved Amy and Mia, they are my family now. Susan refused to leave my office, creating a scene until I threatened to call the police. Afterward, I shared the experience with Amy and my mother. Amy was understandably upset but handled it maturely. My mother expressed her long-standing dislike for Susan, noting her selfishness and pointing out that Susan's return was likely motivated by my newfound financial status. When my children learned about their mother's behavior, they chastised her for trying to manipulate them and told her to stay away from me. Somehow, Susan's sugar daddy found out about this confrontation and warned her not to reach out to me again, or he would kick her out. I couldn't be more grateful to him. The latest update is that my children will be moving in with me this month. They'll stay with us briefly before starting college nearby, as they want to enjoy their independence by living in a dorm. I believe it's important for us to stay connected while also giving each other space to develop our relationship. My children have severed ties with Susan, leaving her with nothing but her sugar daddy. I hope she enjoys her situation until it inevitably turns sour. Haha.